Suppose that f is a function from x to y. X and y are topological spaces with topologies tau and u respectively. F is continuous on x, we mean take any open set V in y, just pull back it, I mean f inverse of V you look at, and just check whether it is available in tau, that is whether it is open in x. This is the way how you are defining continuity. One can describe the same notion either using taking base elements on the codomain or sub-basis elements also. So all these are various ways of looking at whether a function is continuous or not. Now let me discuss a little bit about the natural functions which are going to be continuous. Naturally occurring functions we mean, see, look at any topological space, for example x2. One can naturally define identity function x to x. So identity function will denote by I x. Identity of x, by definition, you take any element from here, it has to go by it has to go to itself. I mean identity of x of the element is again going to be x. This is how it's defined. Now one's thoughts will give that this function is obviously going to be continuous, because once you are working with any open set V here, open in x, then pull back f inverse of V, that is same as that of V, which is again available in tau. So it's obviously going to be a continuous function. So identity function on a topological space to itself is always going to be continuous. But we should be a little bit careful. This is a very straightforward thing because domain as well as codomains are the same topology. We are equipped with the same topology. Suppose you are changing the topologies on X, domain and codomain, then you have to think well. See, for example, the idea is something like that. See, X2 is a topological space. The same X, if I am just making it a topological space with some topology U. Now again I can think about my identity function from x to x. Obviously x is mapped onto x. Now you have to be careful in talking about continuity. Suppose we are taking an open set V in the codomain part. In the codomain part, whenever your x is using, U is the topology, it's given by this. So V is available in U in this topology. Now pull back it, f inverse I will get, that will be same as that of V. But be careful, as a subset of x with respect to tau, whether it is open or not, you have to say now. So you can't simply say that identity function is always continuous. But obviously one can say the following. Suppose you take V here and pull back f inverse of V you are looking at, if it is available in tau, so a very specific case one can easily say, if tau is a finer topology than U, this always happens, because any open set in U automatically becomes open in tau also, which says that you are going to have continuity for the identity function. So the domain part, if you are having a finer topology, identity function is going to be continuous. Still, if you are looking specifically or a particular example, we know that the largest topology, the finest topology on a set is obviously discrete topology. So if you are looking, if you are giving the domain part as the discrete topology, what will happen? That is, you think about identity function from X with a discrete topology. So discrete topology means every subset of X is going to be open. Now again you think about whatever may be the topology you are looking at here. You don't bother about on the right hand side, whatever may be the thing. Now just look at identity function, you can simply say that the function is going to be continuous, because any open set V from any topology if you are looking at, that will be available in the discrete topology as an open set. So one can say that any function, an identity function just defined on the discrete space is obviously going to be continuous one. In fact, a little bit more you can say. You work with any function, a general function, from x given with a discrete topology, right? Then work with any y on the codomain path. Will it be again so? Because you take any v which is open in y, you don't have to worry about what is the topology you are going to y. Because v is open in y, fine. Pull back it, f inverse will be available. That f inverse will be always open because you are taking discrete topology. So you will get a very general example in some sense, but very useful also in some sense. Any function defined on a discrete space is obviously a continuous function. It's a very easy example. This has a dual concept too. The domain, if you are giving the largest topology, every function is becoming continuous. Dual concept is if you are giving the minimal topology on the right side. How to do that? So give the codomain part as the indiscrete topology. That again becomes a continuous function. Any function from anywhere to that in discrete space is going to be a continuous function. That is a dual concept of this one. So these two ends you can always think about. Enough examples one can try it out. Even when you are discussing, one can have all freedom to define constant functions also here. When you define a constant function here, x is a topological space, y is another topological space, another or the same, whatever it means. But how will you talk about a constant function? F is said to be a constant function from x to y, provided every x you are going to map onto a single y naught. So all the images are fully concentrated on y naught, a single point. Now let us think about how the function behaves. Don't worry about, I mean, x I am giving a topology tau and y I am giving my u. I don't bother about that. You will see within a moment, because see what happens for this constant function in that case. Just remember our definition is f of x equals y naught for every x in x. Then how will you test? Just take any v here, open here, take pull back, talk about f inverse of v. See, whenever you are pulling it back, what happens? F v is any open set in y, right? It may include y naught or may not include y naught. That is the only two cases what you have to consider. If it includes y naught, what will happen is f inverse is the full x you will be getting. This will be the full x there. But full x is always available in any tau. Similarly, if you are just taking an open set v which is avoiding your y naught, then take the pullback, it's an empty set. That also will be available in any topology. So obviously all constant functions are going to be continuous in between any two topological spaces. So this concept is very much accommodating all the things what you have already having notion in our mind with the metric spaces and all. So how will you go further? See, suppose you have a function. I am taking topological spaces x, y, and z. So if f is a continuous function from x to y and g is a function from y to z, naturally I can compose it to get g dot f. So that's also going to be a continuous function. That's a very fruitful result, and it allows us to manufacture new continuous functions out of the old. So what I wanted to say that composition of continuous functions is again going to be continuous. This is what I'm going to look now. So my statement is that compositions, so I will be starting with an x, a topological space x. I will take f from x to y, and from y to z I will use g. Then the composition g dot f. Why it's to be continuous? Take any open set here in z. You have to say ultimately what will happen for the pulling back. Pulling back means g dot f inverse you have to look at. Basically it comes with f inverse of g inverse of your v. But a moment's thoughts will give the answer. First, you have to look for G inverse of V. This is given to be continuous. So this pullback here, that is G inverse of V, that is going to be available as an open set in Y. So from that open set, you are again pulling back using F inverse of that fellow. Since F is also continuous, it's again available as an open set in X, which says ideally compositions of continuous functions are going to be continuous again. It's also, it allows us a lot of freedom to manufacture new functions which are continuous functions out of the old. Still, we will discuss a little bit more about. So let me talk a little bit more. See, by the way, I have to say a little bit about product also. So here, suppose I am looking at a product space. Product topology, I mean, I can look about the product topology. If I'm looking at product topology, let me start with x1, x2, etc., xn. N topological spaces are given with me. Respectively, tau1, tau2, etc., tau n, I will give the topologies. So remember, I can define the product set and the product space, I mean topological space. I will mark it as X. So natural topology, that is the product topology coming with X, we have defined it already using boxes, I mean open boxes as base elements. That is how it's defined. Just remember that you have to start with V1, V2, etc., Vn open sets correspondingly in Xi, corresponding Xi. If I am taking the Xi, the topological space with the tau I, then Vi is going to be open in Xi. Just cross it. So this is my V, right? These are going to give the base elements for this product space. So remember that. So this products, if you are looking at, one have enough ways of going for projections, very classified functions which are called projection functions. We will discuss that and the continuity also. But before going further, let me talk about a little bit about inclusion functions also. But it's natural, but still I want to use it again in between. So how to define inclusion functions? That also we'll just discuss it. See, X is a topological space. So if Y is a subset of X, naturally subspace topology will be there, right? Now, with if I'm just taking X here, or X in my Y, I can just map X to X itself by treating that it's a function from Y to X, because Y is sitting inside X. So each X I can mark onto X. So what happens is an inclusion. Y is the inclusion map. So inclusion map, if I am looking at inclusion of X, if I am looking at inclusion of Y actually, if I am looking at, that's again going to be a continuous function. How to observe that? It's easy to observe because, see, if you are taking any open set here, I mean in X, whenever you are pulling it back through this, what you are trying to do is the F inverse of V basically comes with that whatever be the part available in V coinciding with Y, which means you are trying to talk about V inverse Y. But V inverse Y is obviously going to be an open set in the subspace topology. So this actually gives you inclusion functions are going to be continuous. As a remark, one can say that even restriction functions are also going to be continuous, right? So what are restriction functions? Suppose x2, I may write z here. X2 z, I have a continuous function f. Now y is a subset of x. So obviously I will take subspace topology here. Whatever be topology with x, I will take the subspace topology here. So I have the inclusion function from y to x. maybe I will write I. I is the inclusion from function from y to x. We have already seen that it is going to be a continuous function. Now, what is the restriction of f to y? We will use to write f restricted to y. It is simply that you take any y here from y, you have to talk about f inside y, that's all. So f restricted to y of y is going to be y itself for every y in, sorry, to define, yeah, this is defined as f of y, that's all, simply f of y. Whatever be the f value, I have to give the same thing. So f restricted to y defined on any y is f evaluation on y. That is how the restriction function is behaving. So through inclusion, I can use the commutativity of the diagram. From y, I have to go through this map. So my y will be taken by inclusion to x and further by f, which commutes. I mean f dot I will look at that. Since if you are starting it a continuous function f, and if you are restricting, this is what is the restriction going to come, then that restriction function obviously going to be continuous, since it's a composition of two continuous functions. So these are remarkable things while you are going through, especially as I said before, when projection functions are going to be considered. So a little bit more I will say, I mean, to make the terminology finer, we use that continuous functions are always termed as maps or mapping. Not in general terminology, abstract terminology, but for our syllabus and our book, we will say that a continuous function is merely called a map. So by a map or a mapping, we mean a continuous function. Now come back to the projections. I wanted to talk about projections. Projections is coupled with the product spaces. We have just we have seen what are the product spaces. Now let us look at a very particular specific example. What happens? See, suppose you are working with the real line, for example. Naturally, projections, I mean, the product space is coming out. See, suppose R is a topological space with usual topology, and that I am going to take it as the first topological space. I can just think about R with x2, for example. X2 I may write the second topological space, that is also my R. So I'm looking like that. We have some notion of the plane x1 cross x2. So x1 cross x2 comes out as my capital X. So I can just equip X with the product topology. How the product topology comes there? Because this x1 is the usual topology. Here also I will take the usual topology. Then through open boxes, I can define the product space x1 cross x2. So you are working in the plane now, that you know. So look at any point in the plane. That is what is my x is. X is geometrically it is r cross r, r2 or whatever you want, write it out. So it should have a two coordinates representation. If I am writing it down any x here, it will look like x1 comma x2. This is the typical way of writing out a point. If you are remembering your old days of coordinate systems and all. Now, this point, naturally one can project it. That is a terminology we were using long back. So, it has the first coordinate x1, it has the second coordinate x2. So, whenever you are trying to talk about a point in the product R1, R cross R, and realizing x as x1, x2, we have seen that first coordinate whenever we are using the terminology x1, and second coordinate we are using as terminology x2, we further and specifically use these notations, or we are going to call the functions which takes like that. That is, x is the point on the plane whose coordinates are x1 and x2. If you are just looking at the projections, the corresponding coordinate on the first one, it is simply x1. So that can be treated as a function. From where? From cap x, I mean x1 cross x2 or r cross r here to the r. So that I will denote it. It is for the first part. This x1 is the first topological space. So I will denote it as a pi1 of my point. My point x actually needs x1 cross x2. I am abusing a little bit more. So pi 1 of x I will write. Pi 1 of x basically means pi 1 of x1 x2 it means. Now this we will define it as simply x1, the first coordinate sense. So each point on the plane in this situation, it maps onto the first coordinate. That is the first projection what I am going to define here. Very similarly or analogously, one can just send your point to the second coordinate. That you will write it as it is for the second coordinate. So pi 2 you will write pi 2 of that point. So you will rewrite pi 2 of x1 x2. Again, I am just not, it's an abuse of notation. I am not using double bracket. Pi 2, this is defined to be x2. So these two functions is the second projection. So these two projections will give the hint in general how to define projection functions. See, remember, whenever having the Euclidean geometry and all, we have played a lot with this projections and all. So this is about playing, but one can generalize it. Now come back to the very general setup of topological spaces for us. How to define projections we'll see. So formally, one has to start with n spaces as I mentioned before. So I will start with x1 cross x2 cross etc. Maybe I will write xi as the ith topological space. It goes on and ends up with x. They are all topological spaces. So let us equip with the first one with tau 1, ith topology is tau I and nth topology is tau n. Now form the product, give the topology product topology. This product set I will call it as x, equip with the product topology too. Once again remember, a typical element on the right hand side will look like an n tuple. So x1 I will write comma etc xi etc x. This will be the n tuple for any general x. This is how a general x will look like here, the product space. So how will you define the projections here? From this product space, just remember our specific example of R2 that will give the right hint. Now I will define pi 1 of the point x as simply the first coordinate. It will just send to x1. The whole point is set to the second coordinate. Will go to the second called as a second projection to the second one. So pi I of x in general, the pi 1 of x I will define it as x1. So it maps from where to where? So pi 1 is a mapping from a function from x to the product space to the first setup, that is x1, first topological first component what you are going to look at. So x1 is already a topological space, so you have to land upon that. Pi 2 will you define? Pi 2 will define the product set to x2. How will you define the second one then? This will be defined as pi 2 of any point x. A typical point like this will go to the second coordinate. We'll call them second coordinate also. So in general, this x will be mapped onto the corresponding ith coordinate, we will call it. So that is how we are going to define the whole situation. So how to define that? See, x is a typical point on the product space. So for this x, we will define the ith projection I can call and denoted by, so this product space to the ith coordinate means ith space I will set xi, that is obviously equipped with tau I. So two topologies spaces are given. X is the usual product topology, xi is the given or started tau I topology. So from here to here, any x going to its I, xi, am I right? So any x here I will map down to xi. Xi is landing in this xi. So this function I will denote it by pi I. Pi I of my x is simply the xi. That is how the definition of pi I comes. So it starts from x to xi. X is the product topology to xi with the coordinate space, I can call that. Maybe you can write this pi I of x, where it lands xi is the ith coordinate also. So everything will be the same analogy will happen from our experience and all. So very useful functions. We applied a lot with these notions. So what can you say about projection functions or from a product space? In fact, projection functions are going to be continuous. Once again, if you are looking at some flavor of the plane, I mean product topology on the plane, you will get the right hints for attacking general theorems here. Don't restrict ourselves into that, but still it is useful to understand the thing. We will visit that specific one and some hints will outline, and that will give the very profound theorem of that, how the behavior of the projection maps. So let me just look at once again the plane. So I have the plane r cross r, I may write. So r cross r, the first coordinate is x1 is r, x2 is also r. Product topology I am equipped with means x1 I will mark with the usual topology, and here also I will give the usual topology. Then I am trying to talk about the product space with the open boxes as base elements. So just make some notions coupled with this geometry. See, if I am looking at a point here, right? I will see my x is actually x r cross r here, which is my x1 cross x2. So my point ultimately x1, right? This will be x1 x2. This is my x. So as I mentioned, this fellow is pi 1 of map. Here it comes with the second coordinate pi 2 will map. So this lands upon x2. Here it is landing on x1. Now look at the base element here. How the base element comes for r cross r here. You take an open set here. Maybe I can write v1. For simplicity, I will write an interval, an open interval AB like that. It's an open set in the usual topology. And if I am taking another open set here, something like CD, that may be my V2. So cross it. So what I'm going to get, I'll rewrite. In the plane, this is my x1, this is my x2. Here I'm taking an open set, for the time being an interval AB, open interval AB, bounded interval for the time being. Look at this, I may call it as V1. That is an open set in x1. x1 is R, remember that. Here I may write it as GCD, an open interval again. So my V2, if I am writing like this, look at the product space x1 cross x2. What about V1 cross V2? V1 cross V2 is exactly going to be this open rectangle, right? So all this portion is going to come. This is how it is going to come. Now look at any point here. This is actually V1 cross V2. They are going to be base elements for the product topology on x1 cross x2. Now take any point x here. There are some ideas, intuitive ideas we can remember. Any point here, if you are looking, it is an x1 comma x2, which I will write it as x. Then first projection pi 1 will land upon here, as a, which takes to x1 somewhere here, x2, the pi 2 of x will give me x2 here. Now what exactly is going to be pi 1 inverse of x1? That's also is better to think what how the pi 1 inverse of x1 look like. See, you are projecting, whenever you're taking on the plane and if you're projecting the first coordinate, you are not worrying about the second coordinate. So once you are pulling it back, that is, this side is pi 1. So if you are pulling it back, this x1, so those points in the plane which actually gives the first coordinate is x1 will come out. So it actually includes all these points on the line, I mean the vertical line. That is, what is this vertical line is pi 1 inverse of x1. So if you are thinking about what exactly is pi 1 inverse of v1, for example, this AB, you will get the entire strip like this, right? So you'll be getting an open strip like this. So just remember that ideas also. So this is what a set look like. This is V1. This set was V1. And if you are looking at pi 1 inverse of V1, that will be the vertical strip which I have marked here. Very similarly, for V2, if you are just trying to look at what exactly is pi 2 inverse of V2, you will be getting the horizontal strip also, which gives again intuitively the box by taking these finite intersections. Just look at pi 1 inverse of V1 and cross it with pi 2 inverse of V2. At least from here, you can just make a hint that, or intuitively we can think that this comes as V1 cross V2. This is actually, these two strips intersection is going to be something like that. Don't really intersection whenever it comes like that. This is a nice idea what you are going to use it. A base element like that, it goes to come. Sorry, something I have to say here. It's not in product, it's actually intersection I have to say. So pi 1 inverse of V1 intersecting with pi 2 inverse of V2, that actually gives my V1 cross V2. That is how, right? But that may further give some more intuitions if you are working with n spaces and all, because finitely many pi 1 of y1, pi 2 of v2, etc., finitely many, if you are taking more and more spaces, x1, x2, x3 like that, if you are taking, this notion can be developed well, and one can see that at least in this case, you can see that these two intersections actually gives the base element, means one can even think about are they the sub base elements, because once sub base elements are given, finitely many intersections should give the base elements. So that's a good hint to think about in general. Anyway, at least remember these kind of notions whenever you are further developing on the abstract spaces. So with this preparation, we'll start to look at the next example, next theorem actually. In fact, it says that projection maps are always continuous. That's a very fundamental thing. It gives a little bit more. It not only gives, see, look at xi tau I, as we have mentioned before. Xi tau i's are given. They are all topological spaces from whenever I am varying 1, 2, 3 up to n. So I can talk about n projections. Pi I works from x to xi correspondingly. So I projection functions are there. They are all going to be continuous. See, my x is what? X is the product space. Product space, whenever I mean product set equipped with the product topology. Understand? So xi tau i's are given to be n topological spaces, form the product with the product topology tau. Then you have n projection functions. They are all going to be continuous functions. They are all maps in our terminology. Maps means, mappings means continuous functions, we call that. That is the first part of the theorem. But profoundly, the second part is also very much useful. So remember how it is defined. Pi I of a general point x will be pi I of general point. I will write it as x1, x2, x3 like that, xn. Each xi's are in corresponding xi's, capital xi's. This is going to be given to xi, marked onto xi. That is what it is going to come. What it further says, that also we will see. It says a little bit more, the second part. See, projections maps are continuous, but suppose you have any topological space set. Now, X is the product space, which is x1 cross x2 cross etc. I have the ith coordinate here, ith component here. Now you take any function from a topological space Z to X, I may call it as F. So each set will go to F of Z. But what F of Z will look like? It should be an n-tuple, right? Now, since it's in the product land, I can talk about projections again. So n fellows will come here, right? So this pi i's can be talked about again. The corresponding xi's it will match. So any function from an arbitrary topological space to our product space, then you have pi i's. So that composition I can talk about, which gives me f here, pi I here. So I can talk about pi I dot f set to the corresponding xi's. These are all going to be continuous functions. Clear? So first, you will see that projection functions are continuous. Secondly, we will see that any function which is going to be continuous from an arbitrary space to the product space, then naturally occurring functions through taking composition with pi i's, they are later called, these are called coordinate functions at pi's. They are also going to be continuous. Not only continuous, but that side is somewhat easier. In fact, such functions are continuous. You will be getting corresponding f is also continuous. That is an if and only if part. So that we will look later. So let us first look at the projection part. How to say that the projection functions are going to be continuous. Once again, remember what you have done. Why projection steps are continuous? X is our product with the product topology. From here, xi, the map is going to come. Pi I is the notation. So each x here, I'll write a little bit better way. So each x, a point x here, I will use x1, etc. xi. I may write the ith coordinate here. Xn. This is going to be mapped onto pi I of x. By definition, it is small xi I will write. That is because it is the ith coordinate going to come. Why it is going to be continuous? See, this is with the tau I. Here, the topology is the product space. Take any open set here. Here means the ith space I can solve. I may take Vi, for example. Vi is open in xi, the ith topological space. Now I will pull back it. So I will land here pi I inverse of Vi. I have to talk about. What exactly is going to be pi I inverse of Vi? That is what you are trying to look at last time. Pi I inverse of Vi. If you remember what I have stated with the product, plane and all, that generalization will work out here. This pi I inverse of Vi actually look like what? You have freedom. You have to restrict only on you are just saying that the ith coordinate should be xi. Then you are pulling back means you are going to get a space, the part of the space in x with no restrictions other than Vi, the ith coordinate. Which means this will be exactly looking like x1 cross etc etc. Whenever it comes with xi, you have to work about it should be Vi. Then all other fellows are simply xi x1 x2 up to xi minus 1 with Vi cross xi plus 1 cross etc etc Vn. This is what exactly is your pi I inverse of Vi. Because you are pulling back. That is last time you have seen. Whenever you are working with Vi here, pi 1 inverse of here, it was just this strip. What was that strip? It was basically V1 cross x2. Whenever you are looking at the plane, just make you remember that. whenever you are having V2 here, pi 2 inverse of V2 will be the horizontal strip, which actually is given by the entire x1 cross V2. So this is how it formally follows. So here you have n spaces. You are giving that Vi is open in tau I and the xith space. Then if you are pulling back this with the pi I inverse, it will look like see Vi, if you are pulling back, it will look like this. That's all. So that idea is enough for us, because you look at this set, it is a subset of X. So X1 is open in X1 always. All other fellows except Vi's are obviously open in the corresponding Xi's. Here it is Xi, Xn. So Vi is also given to be open. So just use the definition of product space and immediately we can see that this is an open set in the product, which says any open set in the ith Xi space, pi I inverse here is going to be open in X. So projection functions are always continuous. So once you have projection maps are continuous, we can talk about coordinate functions in general. That is what the second part is going to come. That also we'll quickly look at what happens and all. So this idea will be enough. I mean, whatever we have used, that idea is almost covers the entire thing. But we'll write it again formally. We have a topological space Z. From Z, our product space X, which is given by x1 cross x2 cross etc. xn. Maybe the general component is xi with appropriate tau I topologies and all. Now we are trying to talk that if f is given here as a function, from x to corresponding xi's, I have projection maps, right? Then the composition we are going to talk about. Composition means here it is pi I dot f, right? So if f is the given function, form the pi I dot f, that fellow is taking z to xi. Just look at the commutativity of the diagram, that's all. First part is once f is continuous, pi I dot f is continuous. But that is almost obvious because f is given to be continuous. Just you have seen that projections maps are continuous. Already know that composition of two continuous functions is again going to be continuous. So that settles the part. That part is almost trivial. What about the non-trivial part? So for the non-trivial part, we will before further going well, we'll just use this pi I dot f as f5. It's natural also because f5, see each z from here, it's mapped onto here. So which means that will look like n with n coordinates. So you, according to your f rule, we have something like this. What is f of z is answering here if you are looking at it has a first coordinate, second coordinate, ith coordinate and nth coordinate. So comfortably you can write f1 of x here, f2 of x, f5 of x, sorry z. These are all z. fi of z, fi of fn of z, like that. So this is ultimately we are trying to write it down using in this way. So fi's are defined from z to xi. In that style it is going to come. So we'll just denote like that. So these fi functions are the landing towards ith. That's all. Ith component. That is what is happening. That is fi. Z going to xi. It happens. Just saying that this is fi here. So composition is working like that. Now, once you understood this, how to say that the reverse part, the converse part, given that each fi's are continuous, from there you have to conclude that f is continuous. How to say that? To say that remember the following. How to check this thing? You have to start, you see, X is a product topology. So one can take a base element here, from here. This base element you try to pull back through F inverse, it will land upon here. So try to say that F inverse of B is open in set. Then it says that F is continuous. It follows from the commutativity, and since Fi is also going to be continuous, but still we look at how a B will look like here. B will be looking like a base element I want. Maybe I write a V. We are always using V. So here, if I am just writing down B, V as a base element for the product space, that may look like V1 cross, V2 cross, etc. Vi. The nth fellow should be, ith fellow should be Vi. It will look like this. Now, how will you pull back? Pull back to Z. So it comes here. So F inverse of V, how it will look like? That is the most important thing. F inverse of V with a moment's thought, if you remember the whole statements and the examples you have cited there, I mean, especially the plane and all, this actually is nothing other than that the intersections of Fi inverse of Vi. I runs from 1 to n. This one can sit and write down easily. In fact, F inverse of V, if you are looking at, see, that is going to be the intersections of Fi inverse of Vi. Our Fi's are pi I dot F. How to observe that? It's easy to observe in some sense. See, suppose you start from somewhere here, and you have to say that here it's available here, and conversely. One side is trivial, and see, suppose Z is an element in Z with F of Z is in V. That is what you have to look at for F inverse of V elements. Some element here means that is the idea. F of Z should be in V. F of Z should be in V if and only if. What does it mean? The corresponding rule you are looking at, the composition pi I, that's the commutativity I am trying to say, of F offset. This is going to be sitting inside Vi. That has to be true for all I. But what does it say then? This is the composition that is denoted by Fi. So Fi of Z, that is in Vi for all I. So just read that, which means F inverse of V is simply the intersections of Fi inverse of Vi finitely many I to n. Think about Fi inverse of Vi for each I. Vi is open in Xi. Fi inverse of that fellow should be open, definitely open in Z, because this is given to be continuous. So inverse image of an open set is open. This is an open set in Xi. So these open sets, finitely many are taken, so it should be the F inverse of V should be an open set Z, which concludes that this F is also going to be a continuous function. So it always gives us, some generalization of what the result, what you have done with the coordinate function in the real analysis course. We are simply using coordinate functions. We can use coordinate functions here as F1, F2, etc. Fn also here. So just as a good application, we will. So many applications are there for this kind of coordinate functions. You have already met it in the analysis course, I hope. But more profitable examples also one can try with that. See, if whenever you are having a space X, and if you are working in a real valued functions, especially multiple valued function, that is R cross R, if you are having a map which takes each X through a function F, I may have two coordinates, obviously F1 of X, as I mentioned before, this is F2 of X. Then if F is continuous, then both these fellows are continuous, as well as F1 and F2 are continuous, F is going to be continuous. That is the usual exercise we used to do. That is how our F of X is defined. So this it's a routine exercise in the R2 space or Rn space generally. So one can just look back all that kind of results with this. Compare whenever you are comparing it the most general setup. Okay, so projection functions are always going to be continuous. So we can simply say that projection maps are always continuous. Let us look more properties of this kind of notion.